going on, everybody? Zack Rosenblatt here, No Huddle Show, here with Mike Kaye for our weekly preview podcast. Big game coming up, Eagles versus Saints. We're headed out to New Orleans this weekend. I'm excited. I've been there many times. My college roommate is from there, and I've been to Mardi Gras once, and that was pretty crazy. Have you been to New Orleans?
I have not.
You have not?
It's funny because I grew up in like SEC country, so you would think that I would somehow find my way up there, but I'm gonna have to behave myself this weekend. You know, I gotta make sure like that I'm staying grounded. Maybe I'll transcribe a couple of quotes that I got in the locker room or something, or go to a Pelicans game.
Hey, when you get done, the bars don't close in New Orleans until the last person leaves. So,
thanks for tempting me with it. If you're listening to this and haven't heard from me on Sunday morning.
Also, in New Orleans, drinks you can get to go. You can literally be at a bar and be like, hey, can I get a to-go cup? And you pour your drink into a cup and you can walk around with it.
So it's like the Key West. Key West does that too.
Yeah, and New Orleans, just, they love drinking so much. They have like drive-through like margarita stands, which like kind of goes against like if you're trying to prevent drunk driving, you have a drive-through alcohol stand. which is a great
segue into the Eagles versus the Saints, because on paper it looks like the Eagles
are driving drunk. Is that what?
No, on paper it looks like the Eagles need the New Orleans Saints offense to go out drinking the night before for them to have a chance in a shootout, because I know we had to skip our midweek podcast because we don't post just to post. But, this game isn't very important, but I also on the surface feel like it's almost an expected loss from a lot of people's perspective.
They're 9-point underdogs.
Yeah, I mean, and even then, I think some people are probably going to take, the point.
Well, I think Bovada sent us an email. They do it to promote themselves, obviously, but it said it was I think like 60-something% were betting the Saints. Mm-hmm. But a bunch of people are doing the Eagles on the money line, but that's just like an odds play.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, basically, nobody's expecting the Eagles to win this game. Most are expecting it to be kind of a blowout.
Right.
And I mean, there's no reason not to think that. The Eagles haven't given us a reason. They haven't been killed at all.
Well,
but they haven't played somebody like the Saints.
I wrote this earlier in the week. The two things that stick out to me right now are this. The Saints are first in the league in scoring offense, 36.7 points per game. They have scored under 21 points, or 22 points, which is what the Eagles...
Under 22 points.
Yeah, what the Eagles average per game once, and that was 21 points. Do you know how much the Eagles defense allows? 20.3 points per game, which is up there, but the Saints have never scored under that. So...
And the Eagles have done that plenty of times.
Right. So when you look at this matchup, a lot of people are going to emphasize the offenses because the defenses, really, they don't have a shot. I think these offenses are so much better equipped with talent. Like, yeah, I think the way the defense can impact this game is by forcing turnovers, something, again, that they don't do very well.
What do they have, 4 interceptions this season, I think?
Yes, and they only, and on the forced fumbles, they've only collected 3, I believe. So they have 7 turnovers overall.
Oh, that's bad.
That's really bad.
And Jim Schwartz can deflect it to like their other problems, but like that's like the big one. Like, do you look at the big picture? When you force turnovers, you win. When you don't, you lose. Like that's
here's like if you want like a cookie cutter explanation of how bad the turnovers are. Only 2 teams have less turnovers in the league, and one of them's the 49ers. The other one's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are about to set a record for biggest turnover differential in league history. Yeah. So. Again, this is an Eagles team that doesn't do a lot of things well that you would hope that they would in order to beat the Saints. Now, that said, this kind of strikes me as the build-up to the playoffs and the Super Bowl thing when Carson went down and everybody was like, oh my God, these guys are going to be underdogs the entire way. You know...
This is their first time being underdogs this season, by the way.
Right, and Carson, to me, is having a great season. This would be the game to kind of open things up. Like I said last week, Golden Tate was not acquired to beat the Cowboys. He was acquired to beat the Saints, and he was acquired to beat the Rams, and maybe even the Redskins. This is the game you have to use him. There's no excuses about the hurry up. Like, that should have been the entire point of his practice schedule this week, is making sure that when they have to catch up, he's well aware and he doesn't have to be slighted by the play calling. I think we'll get into individual matchups later in the program, but to me... it's not just about outscoring the Saints. You have to force turnovers. You have to stop the run. You've got to be able to tackle well. And I just don't know if the Eagles can do any of those three things. They definitely can't score. I mean, they've only scored over 24 points twice. And realistically, they don't have a convincing win. Now, that said, they win this game. It's all sunshine and rainbows.
That's the funny thing about this league, man. Like, it feels like they'll lose a game and it seems like the season's over, and then they'll come and look really good the next week. And so if they beat the Saints, all of a sudden we're like, wait a second, are they Super Bowl contenders? Whereas, after last week's game, we're like, they're screwed. Like, that's just the way the league is. But I mean, if you beat a good team, then you're back in good shape. Going back to the defense real quick. Malcolm Jenkins basically said what you were saying. Someone was asked, like, so how do you stop them? He laughed, and he's like, you don't go in there expecting them not to score points or not to make plays, but it's red zone defense is going to be at a premium, is what he said. And that's the Saints are going to put up the yards. Like, they're going to go down the field. They have Alvin Kamara. They have Mark Ingram. Like, if anybody was going to run on them, it's this team. And they don't even need to. Like, Alvin Kamara is as good of a receiver as anyone has. And they have Michael Thomas, who I think leads the league in receptions, and he's number 2, I believe, in receiving yards, has 7 touchdowns. They have a couple young guys. They just added Brandon Marshall. They have Drew Brees, who's as tough to defend as any quarterback because of how quick he is and accurate. So that's going to be interesting. And we were talking about the turnover differential. I just want to read this off. I wrote this earlier this week. The only teams with the worst turnover differential in the league than the Eagles are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the San Francisco 49ers, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Arizona Cardinals, the New York Jets, and the Buffalo Bills. The common theme among those teams is that they're awful.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bad group to be allotted with, and I think the Eagles in general just have this feeling of a 7-9, 8-8 team. Now you beat New Orleans, then maybe you're like, well, maybe this is the jump start. Some teams need that jump start. The Chargers were always known for either starting really fast or starting really slow, and then they got that jump start.
Yeah, the Chargers were famous for one or the other.
Right.
A lot of times they would start hot and then tank at the end. But
right, they'd either have a jump start loss or a jump start win, and it's like...
I feel like you definitely want to be the team that is hot at the end of the season if you're going to pick one of those two things, because people don't remember what you did in the first half of the year if you're terrible at the end. So
right, and we've talked about it before. They have 4 division games coming up. They have 7 games remaining overall. If they can steal a win from either the Saints or the Rams and then win out in their division, which I still think they can despite that Cowboys loss, then we're talking about, okay... they're going to go to the not the Super Bowl. They're going to go to
Whoa, bold prediction.
They're going to go to the playoffs. Like, I think even if they lose to the Saints, they can still make the playoffs because they could win out towards the end. And I think that it's very realistic.
They can, but at a certain point, you have to just accept that this team's not good and assume they're not going to live up to what you need them to do.
Well, I think that's if you lose to the Giants.
That's everybody kind of holding on to like one last.
Well, I think if you lose to the Giants, then that's the one.
I wonder if they start firing people.
Right. To me, this game only matters if they win. Because the expectations going in is that they're going to lose and lose pretty badly. They haven't been blown out yet.
Yes.
And I think that's why you've kind of seen the locker room stay together. But if they get trounced by like 20 points, and this was moved up to a game of the week, there's some realistic questions that you're going to have. We all know what the issues are, but it's whether the locker room kind of accepts those issues. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, this team hasn't dealt with a blowout loss in a long time. Maybe since the Bengals game in 2016 when Doug first was here. It's one of the first losses the Eagles have had in a long time. They were just destroyed by the Bengals. Was that on the road?
Yeah.
It was on the road. So this one's on the road in a tougher environment than Cincinnati, and the Eagles are reeling. The least ideal thing that could happen was that their secondary be banged up going against Drew Brees, and that's exactly what's going on. Like, I feel like we can't understate that enough. Sidney Jones is going to be playing on the outside for pretty much the first time in his NFL career. I know he did that in college, but he adjusted his mindset to focus on playing inside. I know they cross-train them. I'm doing air quotes right now. They tell us that all the time, but the reality is, like, they don't cross-train all of them because Rasul Douglas can only play on the outside, apparently. And Rasul Douglas is starting. He struggled against the Cowboys. He's probably going to line up with Michael Thomas occasionally, I would think, right?
Yeah, I mean, that'd probably be the matchup that I would look out for.
And then you have at safety, I mean, are they going to start Trey Sullivan again, or is Corey Graham going to play a lot? Like, it's a problem. Like,
this secondary isn't ideal, and I think that's kind of been skimmed over by not necessarily the fan base, but just the general outlook of Jim Schwartz.
I agree. He doesn't have all his tools at his disposal, which is an underrated.
And if I can get on a soapbox for a second.
Well, you're actually standing on top of the table right now. Yeah. That's weird.
Whoa. They have put so many assets into this offense, and the offense hasn't delivered. And then you have the defense that's been crumbling at the seams and just injuries at every group. They have no depth, whatever. They're not even addressing the depth. They've had to line up 3 defensive tackles in games, 3 corners in games, move free safeties around.
While loading up on receivers, tight ends, running backs, offensive linemen.
Guess who's actually towards the top of the league in most categories outside of passing defense? The Eagles' defense. They're only allowing 20.3 points per game. You should be.
That's really good.
You should be
that's the sign of a team that has a winning record.
This team should be 6-3 probably right now with that type of average at least.
Rushing
defense. They're top 7, and only because
because of those 2 games that were so astronomically high. Yeah,
right. Because Ezekiel. What concerns me with that is they're both division games.
True.
And they've only allowed 31 points off of turn. I mean, I just look. I understand people have a problem with guys lighting up far off the ball. I understand that people have an issue with the tackling, but from a schematic standpoint, the defensive scheme is working. It's just a matter of finishing, and that's not necessarily all on Schwartz. Sure, he calls some bad plays, whatever. And I'm not even fully defending Schwartz. He does take some ownership in this losing streak, or in this season. But I mean, when I look at the offense and how much they've tried to aid the offense and it still doesn't work, that's on Doug. That's on Doug. That's on Groh. The pre-planning stages, they have not started off strong at all. To me, the defense has gotten roped in as a bad group when they're not really. I mean, they've had
Jim Schwartz is being scapegoated, which I feel like might be the thing that happens if this keeps going the way the season's going. It kind of feels like the defense, because the offensive guys are all Doug's guys. He's the offensive play caller, and I'm just curious to see if Jim. I don't see Jim Schwartz being here next season. Maybe anyway. It just seems like there seems like a. I don't know. He doesn't come out and defend Jim Schwartz as much as you would think, considering
who are you going to hire.
That's the thing when people say fire this guy. Who are you going to hire?
You're going to hire
Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles, if he's fired, seems like an obvious one.
Yeah, but then you got to run a 3-4.
Yeah, true.
And then you have to move everything around. You want to hire Tyrell Austin, who just got fired for
giving up 50 points 2 weeks in a row or whatever.
Right. I mean, do you want to hire Todd Wash, who might be on the outs in Jacksonville, where you have to now do a ton of underlooks, and your corners you're going to play a ton of zone, which actually might work. I mean, I would say goodbye to Jalen Mills if you're going to do that. But look, again, I think
Doug needs to look in the mirror.
Oh, for sure.
He says that a lot, and I think he needs to just realize, okay.
I think he's just been listening to a lot of Michael Jackson.
Man in the mirror.
Thank you for that. To me, this defense, it's not just Jim Schwartz. It's this defense that's being scapegoated. And then you look at their moments where Fletcher Cox gets beaten off the ball for that sneak run for a touchdown. You look at the linebackers not being able to tackle. They've done nothing to improve this defense. Absolutely nothing. Bringing up do you know how many I've lost count of how many practice squad guys they've brought up.
I mean, Bosby's about to be, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, you would assume. Again, I think they've done everything they possibly can to enhance the offense around Carson, and I applaud them for wanting to equip Carson with the best talent. That said, though, this offense never gets blamed for anything outside of the running game. And the running game's beaten up, too. That's the one spot you could be like, oh my god, I understand why this is happening. They basically have the same starting offensive line other than switching Sam Alou with Wisniewski. They have 2 really dynamic tight ends. Zack is having a historic tight end season.
They're barely using Goddard anymore.
Alshon Jeffrey's having a great season for the most part. Nelson Aguilar isn't having the great season that he did last year, but he's still producing. You just traded for Golden Tate. How much is different on offense than it is on defense? You know what I mean? So it's again,
running back's the primary difference.
Jordan Hicks doesn't look like the Jordan Hicks of old.
Nope.
Neither does Nigel Bradham.
Brandon
Graham looks like he's lost a step. The one thing that they've added to this defense that made sense and has worked and produced is Michael Bennett.
Yeah.
Avonte Maddox has played really, really well, but
He was supposed to be a special teams guy and developmental this year. That's just the reality.
You've just been like, hey, develop this guy, and they have. Like, that's like the thing. Like, to me, I don't understand all of the hate or like the venom towards Jim Schwartz, because if you really look at the numbers and you actually look at how this team is played for him, I would say the defense has been significantly more consistent than the offense, and the offense. To have Carson Wentz, Zach Ertz, Alshon Jeffrey, now Golden Tate, the offensive line that they have, and an average 22 points per game is ridiculous to me.
Yeah. All right, let's start getting into some actual game preview stuff. Let's look at the matchups. The main obvious one would be whoever defends Michael Thomas. I imagine Sidney Jones will be lined up with him quite a bit.
Yeah, I think
I think the Saints probably move him around, right?
Yeah, so they'll play sides probably.
Yeah, so they'll play sides. I mean that's going to be the matchup. Like, if those guys have the game of their lives, and the Eagles have a chance. But I mean, he's a tough. Like, even the best cornerbacks struggle covering that guy.
Right, and I think the benefit they have is that nobody knows what Sidney Jones looks like on the outside, and I think they don't know what his habits are going to be. They don't know how he's going to be coached on the outside necessarily, and I think that's to his benefit. If you remember, Sidney Jones started off, had a really good 3-game stretch in the slot, and then just dropped off.
Then got hurt, yeah.
Right, I actually think his skill set better fits the outside. I was actually shocked when they made him the starting nickel. You've got Rasul Douglas. I think sometimes it's easy to come in for stretches and produce.
But when you're there from the get-go, and yeah.
Right. That said, though, now he's adjusted to playing a whole game. He had played 96 snaps prior to that game. That's not even close to a full workload. I mean, that's you know.
I mean, in the game where he played the most snaps of the season, he played safety.
Right, exactly.
So it doesn't even, if you factor in just cornerback, he played, I think, less than 10 snaps is what I saw before he started last week.
Right, so when you look at all of that, I think it's fair to kind of give him a mulligan against the Cowboys. And then, I'm really interested to see what they do at nickel. I know they think that Avonte Maddox is their best option, but
seems the direction like they're going to go.
But when you're playing Drew Brees, your single high safety needs to be really quick and really good. And he needs to be able to.
You can't make mental errors against Drew Brees because he'll capitalize on that.
With that said, if they do have Avonte at nickel cornerback, my suggestion would be to play Trey Sullivan.
I think that's what they'll probably do because I don't think Corey Graham can be starting at that safety.
Yeah, Corey Graham's speed is not there. You can deal with mistakes. A lot of people made a big deal out of Zeke Elliott jumping over Trey Sullivan, but the guy outweighs him by like 20-something pounds, and he squared up pretty well.
He just froze.
I don't even know if he froze. I think he just leapt too early, and it's one of those things where Zeke made a really good play, and that is what it is. That said, though, you're going to have your bruises. You're going to have your mistakes. These guys got to be well-trained. Trey Sullivan, to me, seems like a really smart guy. We'll see how athletically he plays. Shannon Sullivan's another guy that you could maybe look at as being that.
I mean, he's been on the active roster for a few weeks now, so.
Yeah, I mean, you need to have a guy with corner instincts, too. I mean, he's got to be able to make plays on the ball. And you're going to have to be able to help in coverage, because if Rasul Douglas gets beat, spoiler alert, probably going to happen a couple of times. If Sidney Jones doesn't seem to be up to speed.
I mean, even the young kid they have, Traquan Smith, he's a really fast player, and he's the kind of guy that would give like Jalen Mills trouble if Jalen Mills was playing. So we'll see how Rasul can handle a guy like that.
Right. I think what you need to see in this game is the matchups. Really, to me, are the defensive line versus the Saints' offensive line. Because this is going to have to be a big game for Brandon Graham, Chris Long.
They need to
Fletcher
pressure
Cox.
Drew Brees. They can't let him get those quick passes off because that's where once he gets into his zone, like, you're not stopping him.
And Haloti Ngata is dealing with another injury.
What else is new? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is, again, what have you done for Jim Schwartz?
I mean, it's possible Jernigan plays. I think they're going to wait until the weekend to figure that out.
Yeah, and even if he does play...
What are you expecting out of him? Yeah, he's got 15 snaps would be like my max.
I would play Josh Sweat a lot in this game.
They keep saying they're going to. He only played 9 snaps last week.
Maybe this is the game that you like.
Just go all in on pass rushing.
And he's a Dante Fowler style player to me.
He doesn't need to play a lot of snaps. So.
You want him to do a lot of stunts. You want to do a lot of misdirect. Like, they're going to have to. I'd also blitz more. I mean, I think Drew Brees can kill you, but you're going to have to blitz at least a decent amount. because, yeah, he's quick, but he's not really a runner. And you got to shake him up. The last time the Eagles played the Saints, Fletcher Cox...
Playoffs, right?
No. They played in
the
last year, Chip Kelly. The Eagles blew out the Saints. And the reason for that was Fletcher Cox was in his face the entire game. You can't let him step up in the pocket. So you need to move him out. The interior pressure is going to be the key in this game. Max Unger's a really good player at center. I believe he was dealing with an injury. Don't quote me on that one.
Their tackle is out, I believe, right?
Right.
Bushrod?
Armstead.
Oh, Armstead, yeah. Never mind.
And, again, you have to create pressure on Drew Brees or it's not going to work. You got to get hands in his face. He's a shorter quarterback. He overcomes all this stuff. So, you're looking at a game that's probably going to be in the late 20s, early 30s at minimum.
Yeah.
The linebackers have to tackle well because Kamara can break tackles. He's quicker than all these guys. He's a matchup nightmare for them. If they can plug him up front, as far as runs go, I think you're in really good shape. I think Hicks is better in coverage than we've kind of given him credit for. He had a rough game against the Cowboys, but again, I think it's not like dire straits, but it's close. On the offensive side of the ball,
yeah, I was gonna.
Eagles, what do you got?
The main one I'm interested in is Cameron Jordan against whoever starts at right tackle, right? Because that's how he's the left end, I believe. Yeah, and he's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. He has been for a while. They move him around a little bit. I think he stands up as a linebacker every now and then. He has 7 sacks, I believe, this year. He has more than 10, 4 times. He's legit.
Yeah, he's an all-pro.
And if he's going against a banged-up Johnson or Halapuli Vaitai, that's a concern.
Well,
DeMarcus Lawrence didn't dominate or anything last week, and he's probably better than Jordan. But
and Doug Peterson said that he expects Lane Johnson to play during his press conference, so that's a good sign. He's pretty confident.
It still depends on what Lane Johnson you're getting.
Right, exactly. I think when you're looking at this overall group, Eli Apple has played decently well since being acquired by the Saints via trade from the Giants. I'm interested to see who he lines up against. I think Jeffrey could have a big game here. I think this is a big game for Zach Ertz. I don't trust Craig Robertson or any of these guys really on the Saints linebacking group.
Their defense hasn't been
Anzalone's fine.
Their defense has been giving up quite a few points / yards at points this season.
But they make plays. They
do.
Can create
That's
turnovers. And
they should have Patrick Robinson, but he broke his ankle earlier this year, unfortunately. So there's no old friend thing going on here. But
yeah,
they miss Patrick Robinson, don't they?
They do. Well, that's yeah, they do.
Man, he's another guy we didn't mention earlier when we were talking about guys they miss. People forgot pretty quickly how good he was last year.
He had an unreal year.
He was maybe the best slot corner in the NFL if you just look at the numbers. And he was not. They were going to cut him after training camp. He was bad in training camp. There's a reason why he signed a 1-year, $1 million deal. There's a reason he was bad in his career before that. He was a first-round pick of the Saints way back when, and then he came here. Probably the reason they wound up destroying the Vikings because that pick six just flipped everything. The Eagles miss guys like that were just able to make those plays.
This is a game where Carson Wentz needs to prove that he's an MVP candidate. Prove that he deserves
those first 15 plays, man. We're probably gonna know pretty quick again.
I would start off and hurry up. I would let Carson do.
Try and air it out.
Yeah, let Carson do what he needs to do. Really work Aguilar and Tate because you can go to Jeffrey and you can go to Ertz, but you need to create some extra onus on these other guys because that's how you win. We've talked about it before. When great players are being great, that's what they're expected to do. What happens in wins is other players stepping up past their momentum point.
This goes into what I wanted to get into. We can just go into it now. I was going to say who's a guy a non-obvious guy that if the Eagles are going to win, this guy has to have a good game. So not a Carson Wentz, not a
on
Fletcher
either
Cox.
side of the ball.
Both sides, go one each.
I'd say Jordan Hicks on defense, no doubt. Jordan Hicks needs to be the playmaker that he has been in the past. He also needs to tackle much better than he did against Dallas. And then on offense, Corey Clement. The Eagles.
The Eagles
need to kind of match the Saints' intensity from an offensive perspective, and one of the things that they do very well is throwing to running backs and getting them out in space. Corey Clement had some incredible moments as a receiver last year. It's time. It's time. You need to utilize him in the red zone. Stop getting cute with Wendell Smallwood. The guy's had one 15-yard run. I mean, bizarre stat. He averages over 4 yards a carry, but his longest run is a 15-yard run.
Smallwood?
Smallwood, yeah. Clement, the way you get him going, in my opinion, is by making him a receiver. He does it well. While he hasn't been a very good runner this season, he's done it pretty well as a receiver. Let Josh Adams be your between the 20 to 20 yard marker runner, and then let Corey Clement be that guy. He had some incredible touchdown catches last year. The one I think it was against the Redskins where he caught it, and Carson kind of was like falling out of nowhere, and he caught it. I mean, it was just Corey Clement's got hands. Trust those. We all know what Alshon Jeffrey can do. We know what Zach Ertz is having a great season, but he's doing it in a bunch of losses. Golden Tate should be a complementary weapon who can help evolve the offense. That's terrific, wonderful. Nelson Aguilar, he's got that deep threat ability. Test it out. Stop being hesitant with some of these playmakers. If they haven't played well, they haven't played well, but you've got to put them in position to bounce back and play well. And I feel like I'm ranting here, but like Corey Clement and Jordan Hicks are two guys that have shown in the past they can play very well. They have not this season. Do your job.
Yeah, I think that's fair, because I think Hicks hasn't had a light shined on him as much this season as a guy who's struggling, and he really, I mean, he's been fine. He hasn't made the plays that he did before all his injuries is the reality.
He's been a C+ player. Typically, he's a B+, A- player.
And then Clement was who I would have said on offense too. Like at a certain,
Don't let me go first.
He's basically complained about his touches, but like prove that you deserve them, guy.
Yeah.
He just hasn't. Like he hasn't proved that he deserves it. When he had the chance earlier this season, he had 16 carries for 50 yards. Like that. I mean, then he got hurt, and then he claims he's been healthy since he's been back. The coaches have been saying otherwise, and that's just a guy that like he wants to be the guy. He's talked about that he thinks he's good enough to do that. But I think it's time he gained yards and made plays.
Not to go off in like another direction completely, but for a team that claims to be like player first and really good at players, Corey Clement, Rasul Douglas, and Stefan Wisniewski have all been confused about their roles, all been confused about their playing time.
Confusion is a great word for it, too.
Confusion, that doesn't work, okay?
That means there's not communication between the staff and the players, or good enough communication.
Or between the front office and the coaching staff. That's a problem. I mean, in any way you shake it. The fact that 3 players...
They had 0 issues last year.
By the way, 3 players before they were 4 and 5 complain about it.
Yeah, Wisniewski was, week 3 or 4?
And honestly, Isaac Seumalo's played a little bit better, but like not to the point where I would have benched him.
I mean, he hasn't been a problem, so...
Right. Rasul Douglas...
They would keep telling us they're going to play him, they wouldn't play him. He would try to avoid it, but he pretty much is like, I don't know why I'm not playing.
And then now you got Corey Clement. So, and I'm sure there's guys that we've missed or not off the top of our minds, but those 3 guys are guys that you've invested previous playing time, draft picks, and money into. And, but like you can't have that. And maybe part of that is the locker room leadership of, hey, you don't have LeGarrette Blount here, so he can't kind of explain what the situation is.
Jason Kelce had a great quote this week about how he doesn't think there's as much like accountability within like the different position groups. So like Torrey Smith was a guy that like there's all these new guys coming in. He was the guy they could go to. There was LeGarrette Blount. There was who else am I?
Brent Selleck.
Patrick Robinson, Brent Selleck. Like these are guys that I feel like even like on the defensive line, Vinny Curry had been around here for a long time.
Chris Maragos isn't out there on special teams, guys.
Darren Sproles isn't out there. Like these are like the glue guys. Is probably the right word for it. And they like we've talked about this a few times. They just didn't do a good job of filling the glue guys' roles.
Yeah,
like
they're using Scott
the guys
Tape.
in between. Yeah, they're using. I just watched this.
That.
I just watched this. It's funny you said. I just watched this terrible movie called Skyscraper with Dwayne the Rock Johnson, and he very frequently uses duct tape, and like it doesn't how in Mission Impossible there's like where Tom Cruise is on the side of the building, he has like these cool like things. Dwayne The Rock Johnson literally just wraps his hand in tape and he uses it as if he's using the high tech. It's like the dumbest thing ever. It was hilarious. But I just thought of that. Like, that's what they're doing right now. They're trying to climb a building with duct tape instead of using fancy fucking...
No.
Sorry, I just cursed.
Well, duct tape would be an improvement. They're using Scotch tape. Like,
True.
you know, like
Scotch tape is bad, yeah.
Like, you find it at the dollar store. This team has a lot of issues, and they can improve those issues. I mean, all you have to do is go to the Walmart and get the duct tape. Like, that's all you're asking yourself, because this team is good enough to play on duct tape. They're not good enough to play on Scotch tape.
There you go. I like
wow,
that.
that was
Look
really,
at that analogy.
That was really...
that was your best analogy work, I think.
Yeah, well, hey, I tried.
Wasn't corny or anything either. Like,
and I didn't say like 45 times, which is an improvement. Moving on from that, I kind of want to talk to you about coaching. So, you've got these two offensive geniuses. I'm using quotation marks with my fingers.
They don't see that?
So, Sean Payton, I mean, I asked Doug Peterson this in his press conference on Friday. Sean Payton and Drew Brees have this offense booming to the point where, on paper, you're looking at a shootout. And I asked Doug Peterson, on paper, you can see this being a shootout. How do you handle this as a playmaker? Or a play caller, sorry. And he's like, well, from the outside perspective, it's probably exciting to see the offenses going back and forth. But, like, as a playmaker, you want your defense to do well. You want to have some support from your defense. You want to have your offense be able to control what it needs to control. They know they need to score points. The problem is, how are they going to score points? And I think this team has gotten so cute in some aspects of play calling. I think the pregame script has been horrible for them in recent weeks, especially. And sometimes you just got to let Carson be Carson. I mean, I feel like Carson's not being Carson. You know what I mean? And
at least not for 4 quarters.
And I think while we should applaud his accuracy, he's not taking the risks either. Because you could say a lot of things about accuracy. He's being smart with the ball. He's doing all this. He's not forcing the throw. Sometimes you have to try to make a play and just trust your playmakers outside of Zack, if that makes sense. Like every tight window throw that he makes is either to Jeffrey or Ertz. I haven't seen a lot of tight window throws to other guys. Jordan Matthews is out here making plays. Hashtag brand of someone else. That's the thing, man. Get Corey Clement out there, do some wheel routes, put him in the slot if you need to. Use Golden Tate any which way you want. As we said last year, I felt like as I said last week, I felt like Tate was put in a lot of really rough spots in that game. If he's your punt returner, terrific this week because he's had an extra week to prepare. But I just think you set him up to fail in that game. And he honestly, if you were to give him a grade, I'd probably give him like a D.
2 catches for 19 yards. That guy they just acquired to make a change on their offense.
Yeah. So again, hopefully he's used more. So what else you got?
All right, let's do predictions.
I'm going to go with, like I said, I think this will be at least 30 in the 30s. I'm going to go with the Saints 38, the Eagles 31. Until they prove me wrong, I can't. You can't realistically pick the Eagles in this game.
But you have it being fairly close. Do you see that as a real 38-31, or the Eagles get a bunch of points at the end?
Oh no, I think this is going to be a very close game until the fourth quarter. One, because whoever makes decisions in this universe hates us posting at the gun, and two,
it always got to be close.
Yeah,
the Eagles either are ahead and they're slowly blowing a lead, or the opposite. So
I also think this is a game where the Eagles have a lead at some point, and the defense kind of just gets worn out because Drew Brees and
wears them
down.
The Saints are built to either come from behind or hold a lead because of the way they have 2 running backs and a great passing offense. It's unreal.
That said, I think this is a good game for turnovers. If they want to start their turnovers, this game, there should be moral wins in this. Even if they lose and they play it close, I think that's something to take away, and then you build on that moving forward. Because again, this is not a must-win game. I'm sorry, it's not. It is very close to must-win.
It's a must-play-well game.
Yeah, you have to show that you can contend with because then there's no point in going to the playoffs.
Yeah, at that point, you're going to be middle of the road. You're not going to beat the Saints in the playoffs. You're going to have a middle of... I mean, they're not going to lose on purpose, but
Right.
they're going to have a middle of the first round draft pick, which isn't exactly ideal.
And, you lost your game against the Cowboys, so you can't just rely on your division games anymore. You have to beat... They have 3 out of division in the next 7 games. New Orleans in New Orleans, Los Angeles in Los Angeles,
Texans at home,
and the Texans at home.
Those are tough. Those are 3 hard games.
They really have to win 2 of these games to make the playoffs.
Yeah. Especially, and then you're expecting them to win most, if not all, of their division games.
They have to
on top of that. Yeah,
they're not going to make the playoffs.
So I'll get into my prediction second. So if they lose this game, how do you think they need? What does the record the rest of the way need to be for them to make the playoffs?
They have to be at least 5-1, ideally 6-0.
Because that way they would be 9-7, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if they
have not won consecutive games all season,
and they haven't given us any reason to think they can do that either.
Right. So prove me wrong. They win this game, I'll be back on not back on the bandwagon, but I'll be a lot more optimistic, and then I'll also be like, oh man, they could lose to the Giants the next week.
Man, imagine if
the way the season's going,
they lose to the Giants.
But imagine if they win this game and then beat the Giants.
What if they win this game and then lose to the Giants?
Well, but that's the worry. But I think
I'm just saying, could you imagine that range of emotions in Philadelphia? They would be like, all right, we're back to the Super Bowl. Then they lose to the frickin' Giants.
I think the way you cover the way we have to cover this team is kind of the way that players say they want to take it as a week by week thing.
Yeah.
And honestly, people get on us for criticism, but like on a week to week basis, this team is not good at all.
Until they give us a reason to praise them, like we're not going to.
Right, you're beating teams that the Colts have played better now. The Falcons have played a little bit better now, but neither one of them is impressive. The Giants will never be impressive this season at any point. And and then you look at what was their other win? They beat the Jaguars, who have lost 5 straight.
Yeah.
So again, you're beating bad teams. Good teams do that, but good teams also beat good teams.
Yeah, exactly.
I know that's hard to comprehend. But.
Well, I've been pretty wrong in my predictions pretty much every week, so maybe my prediction will be good for Eagles fans. But I think it's going to be disappointment. I think the Saints are going to start off with the ball, and I think they're going to score right away, and I think this game might get out of hand, and the Eagles get some late points to make it look a little closer. But my official prediction was Saints 45, Eagles 28.
Oh.
Yeah. All right.
I think that's what a lot of people are thinking. That's why I think to expect the room to blow up once this happens. From an outside perspective, I can't see that happening because they know that this is a daunting task. If you lose to the Giants, then it's time to.
I don't know. If you're 4-6, I think you can say whatever you want about how they're
sure.
Yeah.
You can, but I don't think it's over. If that makes sense,
yeah.
I think there's still that.
I lean more towards it being over than.
Of course, but this group wants to be optimistic. It doesn't.
Of course, they're not going to we're done.
But I think last year proved to this team that anything can happen. And I'm not trying to be internally optimistic. I just think
you're being externally optimistic. Actually.
I'm not trying to be externally optimistic. I think this division is so bad.
But it's bad. But the Redskins are 6-3.
Yeah, but who they beat?
Doesn't matter. They're 2 games ahead. It doesn't matter who you've beaten. All that matters is what your record
but
is.
They have 2 more games against them.
Well, if the Redskins win this week and the Eagles lose, they're 3 games ahead.
Yeah.
There's zero reason to be optimistic.
I don't know. I think if the Redskins...
You're insane. Okay.
I think... I'm just saying from a locker room group.
If they get destroyed by the Saints, I think the locker room is going to be
if they get destroyed. But I think if this is a 38, 34 game...
Yeah, I guess if that happens, but I guess we'll see. All right, before we go, I talked about reading the comments. I just want to read a bunch of the comments from our YouTube from
Give us
the other day.
the bad ones too.
Yeah, and the bad ones. All right, can you say Laurent Gagnon? Sorry if I said that wrong. Can you say Super Bowl hangover? I think the dogs are still on the sauce. Cheapskate Coin said, I'm a huge Eagles fan, and even I would say right now average might be generous because I think we talked about how they're average at best. Marie DeBooth said, great show. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Laser80 said they are a bipolar team this year.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's probably fair. Mark Boyce Claire said they better put their puppy dog mask on. Can you say one hit wonder? I can say that.
But see, that's the thing, and that's the thing that I would be fighting is you don't want to be known as that team that kind of not lucked into it. There were a lot of major injuries around the league. There were it was not the most ideal season to win a Super Bowl from a bragging rights standpoint, but you've got to. I mean, Peterson's kind of under the gun to prove that he wasn't like a one-hit wonder. Because as much as people give criticism to Andy Reid was
he never had bad. He had like the occasional bad season. But I think they almost always were winners.
Right. I think he had 3 bad seasons. One of them was after T.O. kind of held the team up for dry.
One was his last season here.
The last season that he had, and then his first season wasn't great because he had Doug Peterson.
3 and he was here like 15 years or something like that.
Right.
Like,
so again, I think since he's gone to Kansas City, he's proven he's still a great coach. So it's on Peterson really to kind of prove that
he needs to get better at the year-to-year cohesion of the roster and,
for sure.
and building the team. And last one, Lyndon Brown said, "This is just not our year. Offense needs to overhaul. Too much talent to be continually putting up only 20 points. Defense gets put in bad positions and may need to abandon zone because we are not creating turnovers anytime soon." We talked about that pretty much the entire first half of the podcast. All right, we'll end on that note. Remember, leave comments on all of our stuff. Tweet at us, ask us questions. We'll answer it on the podcast. Our next one will be after the Saints game on Sunday night. You can subscribe to this podcast on iHeartRadio, YouTube, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Thanks for listening, guys.